Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Committee of Adjustments. This meeting is to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act of Ontario. The role of the committee is to review the proposals that are before it, consider the evidence provided, and make a decision based on the four tests established by the Planning Act. In order to conduct an effective and efficient hearing, we have adopted the following process. Tonight's meeting will be live streamed and available for future viewing on the town's live stream page at oakville.ca/live. People attending this meeting are to be courteous and respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and others in attendance. We ask that cellular devices be switched off at this time or at least maintained on silent. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair. All persons wishing to address the committee are required to be provided their name and address. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for all speakers. Any submissions beyond 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the chair. Any materials presented to the committee for viewing will remain the property of this committee. Persons seeking a deferral or withdrawal of an application will be invited to do so at the onset of the meeting. If a request for a deferral is granted, it is the responsibility of the applicant to contact the Secretary-Treasurer regarding the scheduling of a new hearing date. At the request of the committee, the applicant may be asked to provide a brief presentation and answer any questions that may arise. If the applicant has any concerns with the recommendations and proposed conditions found within the staff report, this will be the time to advise the committee. All persons who wish to support or oppose the application will then be given an opportunity to speak to the committee. In the interest of efficiency, groups sharing the same view are asked to select a spokesperson, and individual speakers are asked to not cover the same points as those who have already been spoken. The applicant will then be given an opportunity to respond to comments made by interested parties and answer any questions from the committee. Discussions will then be closed and the matter taken into committee for a decision. Once the committee has made an oral decision, any person desiring a written copy must file with the Secretary-Treasurer a written request for notice of the decision. A green sheet is provided on the table at the back of the room for this purpose, and only those filing with a request will be given any subsequent notice of any appeal. Notice of the committee's decision will be mailed to the applicant and anyone who has filed a written request no later than 10 days following the decision for minor variances and 15 days for consent applications. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal. The last day to appeal will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the applicant and anyone who has received a copy of the decision will then be notified by written correspondence. Thank you. With this, we have one regret, Mr. Michael Talowski. Any declarations of pecuniary interests? I see none, thank you. At this time, I will be taking requests for deferral or withdrawals of applications. Is there anyone who would like to defer an application? Okay, go ahead, sir.
Bill Bilodeau, was it 228 King Street application? My address is 1300 Marlborough Court.
So you're here for application CAV A098 of 2019.
Yes.
Please give me a moment. Who's here in attendance for application CAV 098 of 2019 at 2828 Kingsway Drive, Unit 4? Okay, I see none. We just have to canvass the room to see if anyone else is in attendance. So you'd like a deferral, I'm assuming, to
Yes.
speak
The
to
reason
town
why
staff?
it's, I don't want a deferral, but I have to do a deferral because I got the paperwork for, now they want a traffic report. I need a traffic report done, and it was given to me on Thursday, the paperwork, and I found out Thursday. So there's no time to do.
That's fine. Committee members, I'm in your hands. The applicant seeking a deferral to do the study as requested and then come back with the application. Okay, all those in support? Your application is deferred. The next available meeting is January the 28th. So
I thought it was the 19th.
no, it's the 28th.
It's changed to the 28th?
January to the 28th. And you can see the Secretary-Treasurer whenever you're ready and she'll schedule you in.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Anyone else would like to defer or withdraw an application? Okay, I see none. Very well, we'll proceed with our first application of the night, and that's CAV 148 of 2019 at 2442 Meadowood Crescent.
Good evening, Arlene Beaumont, Outred and Associates. We are the agents for the owners of 2442 Meadowood. We're here this evening to request a variance for lot coverage. The owner is proposing to build 2 accessory structures on the property. One is a pool cabana for pool equipment, and the second is a separate structure for a bathroom. There was a minor variance approved back in 2010 for the existing dwelling on the property that approved a coverage of 40.7%. The 2 accessory structures represent an additional area of 8.82 square meters, and that brings our coverage up to 42.02%. There is a fence around the property because there's a swimming pool there, a board fence, and the proposed accessory structures are less than 3 meters high. So as such, any sort of views from neighboring properties will be well screened by the fence.
Very well, thank you, Ms. Arlene. I did not canvass the room, so if you just give me a second. Who is here for application CAV 148 of 2019 at 2442 Meadowood Crescent? Okay, I see none. All right. We've done our site visits. We're familiar with the application, the accessory structure, and the increased lot coverage as a result of that. Are there any questions of Ms. Arlene at this time? Items of clarification? If you're satisfied with the conditions that are in town staff's report, we are ready to take the matter into committee.
We are. The conditions are fine.
Very well, thank you. Who's ready to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Flemington. Thank you.
Madam Chair, having conducted my site visits and having reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town's written staff report, which I do note is in support of the application, noting that there were no comments this evening by any of the public and that there were no written objections, I would like to move that this application be approved as applied for, finding that it's minor in nature and meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. With that, I would like to include the 2 conditions. That the accessory buildings be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated September 27, 2010, and elevations drawings dated August 14, 2019. And the second condition being our standard approval expiring within 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay. The application has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Application CAV 149 of 2019 at 371 Willis Drive. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Joris Kieran from Kieran Design, 11 Bronte Road, Unit 31 in Oakville. I'm the agent for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Kieran. Who is here in application CAV 149 of 2019 at 371 Willis Drive? Okay, I see none. Okay, Mr. Kieran, this is for the new construction of the dwelling with a lot coverage and a garage variance.
That is correct.
Members, I'm in your hands. Are there any questions of Mr. Kieran? We've all done our site visits. We're familiar with the application. Are there any questions or items of clarification at this time? Mr. Kieran, if you're satisfied with the report from town staff and their proposed conditions, we're ready to take the matter into committee.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Hardcastle, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the materials and undertaken a site visit, I'm satisfied that the requested variances for garage floor area as well as lot coverage conform to the 4 tests of the Act. I'll put forward a motion of approval. subject to two conditions, those being that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the site plan and elevations dated November 11th, 2019. And the second, the standard condition that the approval expires within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued. I would note that there were no members of the public present to speak to this matter and no written correspondence received with regard to it as well.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Application CAV 150 of 2019 at 434 Stanfield Drive.
Good evening
Oh, Mr.
again.
Kieran.
Joris Kieran, agent for the applicant, 11 Bronte Road, Unit 31. Could I get this zoomed out just a little bit? I'm not sure if these controls are going to do that, but
Yep. If you can zoom out for us, that'd be appreciated. I don't know if they hear us.
does it?
There we go.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
I just wanted to briefly address the committee.
If you just give me a moment to canvass the room.
Sure.
Who is here for application CAV 150 of 2019 at 434 Stanfield Drive? Okay, I see none. Go ahead.
Okay. I received a letter a few hours ago from, it doesn't identify the person or the address, but it's from a neighbor, and it raises a concern. I'm assuming the committee's been copied on this letter, so I just wanted to take a minute to address that.
Yes.
With your permission.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. The letter raises a concern and questions the need for the variance, the additional square footage that we're requesting. We're requesting additional RFA to 44.04%, whereas 41 is the allowed. The letter asks what the reason for that variance is, and there is a very specific reason for the variance, which I outlined in my application. This house is being built specifically for the owners of the property, and the only reason the variance is needed is to provide an in-law suite for an elderly member of the family on the main floor. The entire overage is attributable directly to that suite. I'm calling it a suite, but it's not a full suite with a kitchen. It's just a bedroom and a bathroom and a closet. So that is the reason for the increased square footage request in front of you. So I just wanted to clarify that this is not a home being built for resale or for redevelopment or some kind of investment. It's for the end user, and that RFA request is attributed specifically to that. And I believe the members have the floor plan, so they can see that in-law suite on the main floor. The second point that was mentioned in the letter was just about the scale of the house and the scale in relation to the other houses on the street. And I'm assuming the site visits have been done, and you would have seen this being the subject property. These two are being, this one's being developed now, obviously, and this one's a newer house built, I think, 2 years ago. So the massing of the proposed dwelling will fit, very nicely within that streetscape, and the additional massing that we are contributing as a result of that RFA is really just going into the backyard slightly. So from the streetscape, there's going to be really no difference between the massing of these adjacent houses.
Are there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. Kieran at this time? I see none. Okay. If there is nothing further, we can take the matter into committee. And you are familiar with the conditions that town staff have recommended?
Yes, I am, and accept those conditions.
Perfect, thank you. Questions? No? Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Marie, thank you.
Madam Chair, having conducted my site visit, reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff is in support of. Having also taken into account the comments presented by the applicant, thank you for a very fulsome explanation this evening. And noting that there was one written objection towards the variance, but I feel that the presentation addressed some of the concerns that were in that letter from Mr. Fred Creasy. I will note that I was definitely influenced by the presentation, so thank you again for that. I'm satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests of the Planning Act, and I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application for variance subject to the following conditions: that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the site plan and elevation drawings dated November 11th, 2019, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued.
Perfect, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved.
Thank you. Good night.
Application CAV 151 at 1367 Willow Down Road.
Good evening, Ilya and Maya Zelenovic. We're the owners at 1367 Willow Down Road.
Good
Representing
evening.
ourselves.
Good evening. Who is here for application CAV 151 of 2019 at 1367 Willow Down Road? Okay, I see no one. This is a new construction with a residential floor area increase and an internal increase to the garage.
Correct.
We are familiar with our site, with the application, and we've done our site visits. Do you have anything further to add to the application?
We don't have anything further.
Okay, are there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. and Mrs. Zelenovic? Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. At this time? I see none. Okay. Who would like, if you're satisfied with the conditions that town staff have recommended, we're ready to take the matter into committee.
We are.
Okay, who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Flemington, thank you.
Madam Chair, having conducted my site visit and having reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as noting that the town's report is in support of the application, and also noting that there were no comments presented this evening in objection to this application, as well as there being no written objections for this application. I would like to move a motion in support of the application as applied for, noting that it does meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act. And I would like to include the 2 conditions: that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the final approved DESP to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services and Director of Development, Engineering, and Elevation Drawings dated November 14th, 2019. And as well, the second condition being our standard condition with regards to the approval expiring 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued.
Thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? The application has been approved. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Have a good night.
Application CAV 152 of 2019 at 150 Oak Park Boulevard.
Good evening, members of
evening.
committee. My name is Oz Kamal. I'm the agent for Ballantree Homes. I'm a partner at MHBC Planning for the property at 150 Oak Park Boulevard.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Kamal. Just give me a moment to canvass the room. Who is here for application CAV 152 of 2019 at 150 Oak Park Boulevard? Okay, I see none. Mr. Kamal, this is for the multi-story commercial and residential building application?
That's correct. It's for the underground parking lot. When we were moving forward with the plan of condominium to register the condo, it was flagged that there were a couple of minor deficiencies with the parking stall sizes. So in meeting with staff, we thought it prudent to apply for the variances just to get that clarified and rectified before we move forward with finalization of the condo.
Very well, thank you. Are there any items of clarification or questions to Mr. Kamal at this time? I see none. If you're satisfied with the conditions that town staff have recommended, we are ready to take the matter into committee.
Thank you, we are.
Okay. Mr. Hardcastle, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the written submissions, including the staff report, and undertaken a site visit, and having heard that the applicant is satisfied with the conditions that are put forward by town staff, I will put forward a motion of approval, finding that the requested variances conform to the four tests of the Act, that the approval should be subject to 4 conditions as proposed by staff, those being that the parking spaces be permitted in general accordance with the site plan and photos submitted with the application, that the owner agrees to place a notification in all offers of purchase and sale for all units subject to the substandard parking spaces that they do not meet the minimum requirements but have been provided as built to the satisfaction of the town, that the owner provide confirmation that the condominium declaration has been updated to specifically identify all substandard parking spaces to the satisfaction of the town, and the last being the standard condition that the approval expires within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit's not been issued. And I would note that there were no members of the public present with respect to this matter to make deputations.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? The application has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Application CAV 153 of 2019 at 71 Spears Road, Units 8, 9, and 10. Good
Good
evening.
evening, Chair. Good evening, committee. My name is Rafid Costa. I am the agent and architect for this application. We have Dr. Clinic and...
Sorry, can I get your name again?
Rafid Costa.
Costo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
If you just give me a moment. Who is here for application CAV 153 of 2019 at 71 Spears Road, Units 8, 9, and 10? I see none. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Costa.
Thank you. We have Dr. Clinic and pharmacy, and we like to have opening between them. We apply for building permit. We got the permit, and both of them is under construction.
Yes, so this is the expansion in the medical offices, and we do have 2 letters of support that have been registered. Do you have anything further to add, or are there any items of clarification of Mr. Costo at this time? See none. Do you have anything further to add to the application? If you're satisfied, we are ready to take the matter into committee.
Yeah, we agree.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Ms. Murray, thank you.
Madam Chair, having conducted my site visit, and by the way, it wasn't easy because of construction.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's like dodging bullets on Spears Road. Reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff support report, which I note that the staff is in support of. Also having taken into account that there were 2 written letters in support of. I'm satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests of the Planning Act. I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application for variance subject to the following conditions: that the medical office be expanded in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations drawings printed date November 20th, 2019, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Application has been approved.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year.
You as well. Application CAV 107 of 2019. This was deferred from August the 27th at 320 Douglas Avenue. Good evening again.
Good evening, Arlene Beaumont, Outred and Associates. We are the agents for the owners of 320 Douglas Avenue.
Thank you,
As you
Ms.
mentioned,
Beaumont.
this was deferred from August 27th hearing. The owner has made some changes to the proposal. The first is that he's actually decided to take down
She
the
always goes
existing
faster than- garage
and build a larger garage, slightly larger by 1.02 square meters. The proposed living area addition remains the same. It's a one-story living area addition to the rear of the house and a new attached garage that's accessed off of a sort of a long laneway or long driveway. Because the garage is being increased, the garage area is being increased slightly from what's existing, the variances that we originally requested in August have changed a little bit. The total lot coverage that is now being requested is 23.99%. We had previously requested 23.97%. Further, the proposed rear yard setback to the new garage is now 0.85 meters. The existing garage is 1.14 meters from the rear lot line. So because we've increased the size of the garage slightly, we've gone out towards that rear lot line, the setback has decreased. The new addition area will not be visible from Douglas Avenue, and an existing board fence will screen views of the addition from Galt Avenue. In addition, the slight increase in garage area will give the homeowners a functional garage that now meets the bylaw requirement for interior parking space dimensions. We do have letters of support from neighbors at 324 Douglas and at 371 Galt Avenue.
Very well, thank you. You always beat me to the punch, so I have to just take a moment and still canvass the room, although we've gone through the presentation. But is there anyone here whose attendance for application CAV 107-2019 at 320 Douglas Avenue? Okay, I see none. Now that I've cleared that, are there any questions of Ms. Beaumont at this time? Or items of clarification? Thank you for that clarification in terms of the difference between the application that was deferred from the 27th. Sorry.
Sorry, Madam Chair, the letters of support, I haven't seen them.
Yes, we didn't get them. Do you have them?
I do. I have them right here.
Madam Chair, I have a question on the letter,
Yes, please go ahead.
if I may. Where are these neighbors located?
I believe their addresses are right beside their names. One is on,
Oh, sorry, 324 Douglas and 371 Galt.
yes, that's correct.
My apologies to clarify in relation to the property.
We
Oh.
can do it here. What numbers are they?
324
Douglas?
Douglas,
And
right beside it, and 371 Galt.
371,
Galt. Got it, okay. Thank you very much.
371. So they're the immediate neighbors.
Immediate neighbors.
Yes.
Those
Thank
two
you.
right
Flanking
there.
on both sides.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll hold on to that. That's part of the committee's records, if that's okay. Are there any other items of clarification or questions of Ms. Beaumont at this time? I see none. Okay, if you're Sorry, one more. Yeah, go ahead.
One more question. I have a plan dated April 18th, 2019. However, there's something earlier, September 18th. It's a
The
revision date? Okay,
It's all the way on top. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
There. We're good? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Flemington. Thank you.
Madam Chair, having conducted my site visit and having reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town's written staff report, which I do note is in support of the application. Also, having taken into account the comments presented by the applicant this evening, as well as noting that there were 2 letters of support submitted in tonight's presentation, and that there have been no written or oral objections from the public. I'd like to thank the applicant for revising the application from what was previously applied for, noting that this revised application does meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act. And I would like to move the motion in support of the application as applied for tonight with the following conditions: that the additions be built in general accordance with the site plan and elevation drawings, revised number 4, dated September 18th, 2019, and our standard condition that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Okay, application CAV 125 of 2019, deferred from October the 8th of 2019 at 126 Chartwell Road.
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Richard Mann. I'm the architect for the owners of 126 Chartwell Road. I live at 153 Woodhaven Park Drive in Oakville.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Mann. I realize that those are behind you are the owners, but I will still canvass the room for the record. Who is here in attendance for application CAV 125 2019, deferred from October the 8th at 126 Chartwell Road, other than the owners? Okay, I see none. Go ahead. We have 6 letters of support plus the 2 that came in this afternoon, so, or they were late anyways. Oh, no, this one is not, sorry. Mr. Mann, are there any items of clarifications or questions at this time? Can you just explain to me the arborist report that was submitted?
That was submitted today.
Yes, the Arb Corp? Was that submitted by
No,
you?
I don't know if that's a report. Is that a letter on the grading
Okay.
around the trees?
Okay.
That was there specifically to address the some questions regarding the red oak tree that we're trying to preserve. My clients went through some extensive measures to kind of evaluate the root structure of that tree, hydrovac, arborist reports, so that we could determine whether or not it was indeed salvageable, as it's a kind of a prominent feature on the lot. I can go through, I mean, I have everything prepared. I can go through a full presentation if you wish.
I mean, I'd like
I
to
don't
know
wanna
the
leave anything
differences
to-
from the prior application to where we are now.
Right.
That would, I think, would certainly be helpful.
Okay, so let's begin. So this is the site plan here. So I'm not going to, so we basically, we have 5 variances: driveway width, garage size, dwelling depth, front yard setback, and building height. And it appears, based on the previous application and the current application, the predominant item on the docket is the building height, as that's the effect on the neighbors. We also had a question on the front yard setback for the neighbor at 134 Chartwell. So subsequently, we've left the driveway width, the garage size, and the dwelling depth the same. I won't deal with those unless you have a specific question on that. I will. The front yard setback, what we did is we pushed the house back so that the front face of the house meets the zoning bylaw. The only element that projects in front of that setback is the single-story covered front entry porch. So that setback has been increased by 0.37 meters from the previous application. With respects to the building height, we've revised the application from 13.69 to 12.24 meters, so we've dropped it by 1.27 meters. So I'm going to pass this to you guys, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
So there are three contributing factors to the variance request for height. That's the one I'm going to deal with. There are three contributing factors to this variance. It's the location of the house, the large red oak, and the existing grade at the proposed location of the house. My clients purchased this house on 126 Chartwell because of the size, the beauty, the existing trees, and the location on Chartwell, and the fact that it had a tennis court. They're avid tennis players, and the tennis court was a critical element in the decision to purchase. So in determining the location for the house when we started the design, it kind of evolved naturally because anything other than the location where it is would involve removing these kind of central main trees in this area here, or putting it in this location would involve removing the tennis court, and the tennis court couldn't be flipped up to here because it's a hill. So the natural evolution of the design led the house to actually sit in the same location that the existing house has sat. The house is designed with the garage facing to the north, with basically a side entrance garage, the street facade facing Chartwell, and then the predominant main rooms on the ground floor facing southwest catch the main southwest exposure and also facing the internal lot of the house. The first sheet of the handout that I gave you is, I've called it context setbacks. The intent of this is based on the previous, in the previous meeting, Mr. Tulowski had mentioned that for all intents and purposes, this property is an internal lot facing everyone's backyard. So the intent of this drawing here, this diagram, is just to evaluate from a planning perspective, separation distance between houses. In the RL1-0 zone, probably the most restrictive combination of setback distances would be two rear yard setbacks, which is 10.5 plus 10.5, which would give you 21 meters. So the intent of this diagram was to show you that in this particular case, it's similar to a house that's in the rear yard. It has the closest setback distance is 22.57. So in all cases, the actual distance and connection between adjacent houses and the proposed house is well over the 21 meters, and in some cases is upwards of 57, 58 meters. The next sheet talks to what I had mentioned to you previously. So there was some, my clients did their due diligence. They canvassed the neighborhood after the meeting. They went and spoke to all of the affected neighbors. One of the neighbors has obviously dropped his objection. He hasn't written a letter and he's not here. And there was some skepticism as to the legitimacy of us maintaining that red oak, and thinking that it's a sort of a tool to keep the house up high. It couldn't be further from the truth. The fact that the tree is actually causing issues for us because it's keeping the grade level higher. So it's actually causing issues for us in terms of the overall number and the height of the house. So what I wanted to do was to just show you this. This was taken a few weeks ago when we had the first snowfall. removing the existing driveway around that tree. So my clients have gone to great expense to evaluate the root structure at the base of that tree to see if it is viable, if we can keep it, and every intent will be made to keep it. So the proximity of that house is, you can sort of see kind of probably in this location here. Let me slide that up. Probably in this location here relates to the corner, which is essentially, that sort of sets the height of the house for this whole project. And what I'm going to do, so we're going to maintain that grade, and that's kind of the, I would say that would be the highest point that, or the lowest point that we could build the house. So then that just sort of leads you to the next sheet is really just a quick diagram. Very straightforward, very simple on good practice design as to how we would establish a floor height above the minimum required grade height. It's where the grade in the building intersects. So in this particular case, we've got about 6 inches or 0.15 of a foundation wall. That allows any water to flow away from the house and flow around the house. And then we obviously have our floor plate structure and our finished floor level. And that distance is totally 0.55 of a meter. So that sets this 8730. That's basically the height of the grade around the tree. And then 8785 ends up being the height of our finished floor. So the next one is sort of a stripped down version of the site, giving you the predominant major grade elevations. It's a difficult, how do we evaluate the height of a building when we have a situation where our front yard setback is so far, our established grade is taken from a number that's 61 meters away from the house, is on an area that's 2.5 meters below the existing house, the existing sort of grade level around the existing house. So it's a very difficult metric to actually say that, well, that's a good reflection of what the building height is. So in this particular case, what I wanted to do was to say, really the only way we can evaluate whether this is a project that's minor in nature and evaluate the height of the house is to evaluate it around the grade on which it's sitting. So what I've done is I've got the 4 main corners of the house here. We've got 8795, that's the level of the existing pool right now. 8730, that's the level of the tree. 8674 is the existing grade at this point, and then 8666 is at this corner. So if you take those 4 and you average it out, you end up at sort of 8716. That's about the most realistic that we could do to evaluate it in that particular location. The height from that point is 10.74 meters of the proposed house. The height of the existing house is 10.19 meters. So it's a difference of 0.55 meters. So in context and in relationship to the existing site and the existing structure, it's a 0.55 meter increase. Both of those, I mean, obviously the zoning bylaw doesn't count 9 meters from around the average grade. Again, it's one of those measurements that is done differently all over the province, 3 or 4 different ways in the different municipalities. It's a difficult one to do depending on the slope of the property, sideways slope, rear slope, front slope. It has a different effect on the grade of the house. What I'm trying to show in this cross-section here is the lower one is sort of more of a general one that takes it right from the far edge of the property. This is basically cut right in front of the face of the garage. So you can kind of see over here, this is the existing grade. We have to we're cutting the hill down to allow for the driveway, and then the average grade goes down here. So I've given you some numbers here. The 12.42 would be the established grade to the street. This 10.74 would be this average grade, this number that I've come up with. And then you can see in outline, the height of the existing house. So when you kind of put this into kind of context, you can see The amount that we're talking about is this small hatched section here of roof line, 0.55 meters above the level of the existing roof. And another item to note is, again, having listened to the committee, we sunk the pool. The proposed pool is now sunk 0.45 of a meter from the existing pool. So we've dug that further into the hill. The existing floor level of the existing house is 0.2 meters higher than what we're proposing. So we're further sinking the floor level of the proposed house into the hill. The next one is a similar one. It's taken across the back. So it's taken across the back, and it shows the profile of the existing house, shows the height. It shows the top of the existing grade is dotted, and that's obviously what's there now. The other sort of grade level than the pool level is what we're proposing. So we're cutting that into the hill in this particular location. And again, we've dropped the house 0.2 of a meter below the level of the existing one. And this hatched level, again, shows you the amount of roof that is higher than the existing. And further to that section of roof line is on the next page. And so that's just basically just a plan level. And that's showing you the darker hatched section is the area that would be in excess of the height of the existing property. So it's quite well set back from the perimeter edge of the building. It's all sloping away from you. It's a hip style roof. There are no gables facing it, whereas the existing house has a full height gable on it. So I would argue that area of roof that exceeds the zoning bylaw is actually very minor in nature and won't have that much impact on anyone looking at it. There were a couple of questions. They're not here, so whether this is necessarily appropriate, but I'll go over it. There are a couple questions from the neighbors at 134. They had raised some concerns regarding the driveway proximity to the corner of their property and the screening and hedging. This diagram here is just as an overlay. The darker hatch is the existing driveway and the lighter hatch is the proposed new driveway. So, the argument that we're doing something different in this corner is not correct. We're actually just following the existing contours of the existing driveway, and the only point that we deviate is when we pull parallel to the property line over here, where it's pulled 6 meters away from the property line and then loops around into the garage. So that in my mind isn't an issue.
Okay.
And then there's a handout here. I'm not going to go over it specifically. It's really just more there for context.
Yeah, we have that.
I think you have the hand. Yeah, you have that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we do have
So, basically, in conclusion, the neighborhood in which this property exists is a neighborhood that has many large lots and many appropriately large-sized homes. Many of these homes have requested and been granted height variances. There's a whole list here. I know the variances are very specific to each property, so they'll have to suit their own context. But it's just an example of the fabric of the neighborhood. 126 Chartwell, it's one of the largest lots on Chartwell. In fact, I've been told it's the second largest lot on the property. It could support a house of 17,500 square feet. We're proposing one that's about less than half of that. We've heard the comments from the committee in the previous application. We've attempted to address them by eliminating the rooftop terrace, by moving the house back, and by lowering it 1.27 meters. We believe that when viewed in context of the whole property and the neighborhood, we agree with planning staff and that the design as submitted meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act and is worthy of your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Are there any questions or items of clarifications? Go ahead, Ms. Murray.
Just a comment. Thank you
Yep.
for the presentation.
No problem.
Thank you for working with staff, and you've really done your homework, and it's laid out extremely well. So it's very much appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I second that.
Thank you.
Any other? Yeah.
One more question Madam Chair, to town staff.
Mr. Hassan?
Mr. Hassan, the notes don't indicate dates on the revised submitted site plan.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I don't believe they actually noted, similar to other applications, the actual date that they had been date stamped. So I just said revised plans as submitted with this version of the application.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? Okay, if you're satisfied, we're satisfied, and we can take the matter into committee.
Thank you.
Who would like to move a motion? Mr. Hardcastle, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to comment before I go into my normal sort of, that the owners and the applicant have worked with staff and residents to address some of the concerns that were raised, and it was obvious in the presentation. So I think that was much appreciated in terms of myself. Would also note that this is a unique lot in a contextually varied neighborhood, but the orientation and relationship of this house to the adjacent homes, as well as to the street, is different than you see most any other place. And I think that has to factor into the consideration of the variances. And you did a great job, Mr. Mann, in terms of taking us through what it was that, what that relationship is. I think that the topography and relationship of the lot to adjacent properties warrants an approach to the design of the building, and I think you've done a good job in being sensitive to that context with the revision. So I'll be putting forward a motion of approval, having reviewed the staff materials and obviously having heard your presentation. I do believe that the requested variances conform to the 4 tests of the Act, and that approval should be subject to 2 conditions. The first being that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the revised submitted site plan and elevation drawings, and the second being that the approval expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued. I do note that there were a number of correspondence received, and the applicant's presentation has satisfactorily addressed the preponderance of those comments.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay. Your application has been approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We have confirmations of the meeting for December 3rd. Who would like to move those minutes? Okay. Whose hand up went first?
Not mine, I wasn't here.
Mr. Flemington. And motion to adjourn? Mr. Hardcastle.